A warm welcome to this last session of day one of Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. It is a real pleasure to be here with you. Please take this opportunity to introduce yourself in the chat. And if you attended one of the previous sessions, please tell us in the chat what were your key takeaways, the highlights, and the light bulb moment. And on the technology point of view, as we all love technology, to have the best possible experience, remember to click the full screen button, and you can extend the chat on the side, so you will have a full view of everything that is happening. We have had some very busy chats this morning, so bear with me. I will try to capture everything you said, and if you have any questions to our speakers, try to remember to post them on the question tab, so I'll make sure I'll address them during the Q&A session. So going back to our topic. This session is linking right back to our first session this morning with Don Taylor's opening. I'm sure a lot of you were there. He reviewed the learning landscape at strategic level. And this session is a great transition because strategy is great, but sometimes we need a little bit of a boost about the tactical element and the practicalities about implementing those strategies. So I am delighted to welcome Lina Randawa, Head of Learning Solution at the Omniplex Learning. So sorry. She will tell us all about the options available at the moment, the latest buzz, the latest technology that you can hopefully play with and create some extraordinary learning experience. So a very warm welcome, Lina.
Oh, thank you so much, Gail. Thank you for having me, and welcome to everyone. I think already, first day of Learning Technologies has already been a great one. I'm thrilled to have you all here, although we've got people from everywhere, which is already amazing to see in the chat. And I'm going to dive into an exciting and ever-evolving topic today, aren't we, Gail? So how emerging technologies are supercharging learning and development. So keep the chat going all the way throughout. Myself and Gail would love to hear from all of you and your thoughts on this very important topic, which is changing the whole landscape of L&D at the moment. So let's get started. I'll ask for my slides to go up, and here they are. And for some of you, you may not have heard of Omniplex Learning. So if you haven't, that's fine. I'll give you a really quick high-level overview of who we are. So we are a learning solutions provider, and I've been working at Omniplex Learning for about 3.5 years now, and L&D for about 11 years. And I was actually a customer of Omniplex Learning before I started working there. And that was because I had purchased Articulate 360 from them. And if you as well use Articulate 360, the chances are you are also a customer of Omniplex Learning, because we are the UK's only certified partner for Articulate and also beyond. And as an organisation, we connect all of the digital learning needs in one place. So as well as authoring tools, we sell LMSs such as Docebo. We provide training on digital learning systems and skills, which is the department that I head up. And then we also offer digital learning as a service. We have digital adoption solutions, and we have our very own creative studio team who work very hard to create really beautiful bespoke content for our clients. And I've got a couple of examples of that coming up. I think it's safe to say that as a company, we get tech. We're immersed in it every single day. Our clients are L&D professionals, so we hear firsthand their challenges, but also their wins and what they're doing really well in, and we help them reach their L&D goals. And a big challenge that I'm hearing from a lot of L&D professionals that we speak to is technology. As exciting as it is, it can be really, really overwhelming. So today I'll go through some practical ways that we can take advantage of the technology that we have access to, and also how we can incorporate them into our learning design. But before we do that, I want us to have a little look backwards, okay, before we have a little look forward. So I'm going to ask you, let me know in the chat the answer to this question here. So what technology has been released since the year 2000? 2000. Okay, it's quite a long time ago. So think back all the way back from, to Y2K, when the ball was about to drop on the millennium. Feels like ages ago. But what technology has been released since the year 2000? And whilst those answers are coming into the chat, I'll explain a little bit why I'm asking around 2000. So e-learning was coined around that time by Elliot Macy. And back then, it was pretty much a PowerPoint slide with a next button. And 23 years later, we still have e-learning like that, right? We still have those clunky PowerPoint style types of e-learning with a next button, which we all know are pretty bored of clicking. But so much technology has come out since then, and we can still feel like we're in a bit of a 2000 rut. So let's have a look. Gail, do you want to let me know what's happening in the chat? What are people saying in terms of technology?
It is hectic. We've got everything from smartphone, absolutely. Chat GPT, yes, of course. Moodle, we've got AR, VR, 5G. Someone thinks it's an insane question because so much has happened. But some of us are old enough to remember before 2000. No comment. Social media, absolutely. LMS, instant messaging, interactive whiteboards, voice assistant, Web3, video doorbell for domestic settings. I've also made up an appearance. Internet, yes. MR. Yes, I think keep it coming, but I think so far we've covered everything that is in the chat.
Brilliant. Good. That's a lot, isn't it? There is a lot that has come out. I'll share with you my little take on this and what I could go far as back as sort of remembering. So on the screen there, you can see so much game-changing technology that has been released over those 23 years. And here's kind of, like I said, what I remembered and thought of. YouTube, the world's second most used search engine after Google. It's often known as that how-to search engine. What does that mean for our learning audiences? And then if we think about TikTok versus YouTube, TikTok's shorter, it's snappier, it's more attention grabbing. And then thinking about what that's maybe doing for our attention span. Fitbit providing us with reminders and rewards and badges. It's almost gamifying that learning or gamifying fitness for us. And then Rosetta Stone, who remembers that? I remember thinking this was so cool when I was studying for my German GCSE at school, and it had voice recognition, and it came with this little headset in the box, and I thought it was so cool having a headset. Little did I know I'd be sitting on team calls for most of my adult life in my career with a headset on. But it's a new way of learning a language, and now we do that on apps like Duolingo. Google, of course, as so many of you have mentioned in the chat already, it's allowing us to find those answers really quickly. It's giving us short bursts of information. It's allowing us to learn in the flow of work. And before that was the likes of Ask Jeeves. I used to ask him to do my homework, and he didn't do very well. But it boomed, that whole search engine. And now we're seeing, of course, the world of AI and how that's the next technological boom. When we're delivering training, in face-to-face environments, it's a lot easier to engage with learners. It's a lot easier to hold their attention. But when we're putting learning in front of our learners, we're in that digital space. We are competing with the technology standards that are out there. And that is really, really tough. But the reality is that we've become quite accustomed to a certain expectation of digital content, right? When you go on social media, you expect it to be a certain way. When you use your Teams on a work application, you expect it to be in a certain way. Yet so much learning I see still looks like it's from year 2000, maybe with just some nicer graphics and a little bit less text heavy, but it's still pretty dated, and it's pretty long in duration sometimes as well. So I'm going to ask you another question now, and that is, what do we expect of our learners, or what do our learners expect of us, I should say, in 2023? Or even if you're a learner, what do you expect your learning to be like in the world 2023? Let me know in the chat what you think. Okay, those answers are coming in. Gail, again, let me know what the answers are.
They are starting to come in slowly. So I think there is a slight delay between the broadcast and the answers. So we're going to give it a second, but now it's starting to arrive. And the first and most common one is interaction, interactive, anything about around that theme. We've got on demand, we've got adaptative, personalized, in the flow of work, interactive content delivered quickly. So speed is definitely one of the comments. Fun also, relevant has come up. The best tools, someone mentioned. Someone said communal, so I guess also everything branching out towards collaborations and collaborative learning. Ooh, someone says something that I really like, which is simple. Simple and
Good.
intuitive. Engaging and in line with my needs, says Marion. And then Jed said, my question is always, why do I know more than the person presenting? Sorry. We've got Liz saying impactful, relevant and in the moment, personal, engaging. So we've got a lot around the engagement, the impact, and I think time and speed is also one of the key elements of the responses we have in the chat.
Good, brilliant. I think there's a really good varied varied responses there, and I preempted a couple as well, which I'll share with you on the slide. And I think it's reinforcing a lot of what you've actually just said. You know, things like making it fun. Lots of you mentioned learning in the flow of work, just in time learning, short bursts of information, collaborative learning. I think it was Kirsty that mentioned around knowing the why. I think that's a really important one. You know, what's in it for me? You know, why should I be investing in this learning? And you know, modern learners have evolving expectations when it comes to their learning experiences, and these expectations can really vary depending on different factors, as you've also mentioned in the chat. You know, it could be down to a specific learning goal, it could be a cultural background, it could be a technical standpoint that they're at, or a technical speed that they're at. It could be their age, it could be their preferred learning styles, and lots of other things. We're going to go from expectations to reality for a moment. And if you've attended any of my training courses before, you may have heard this story before, as I've shared it with a few delegates of ours. And it involves my real WhatsApp messages, okay? And it's between myself and one of my best friends. And it was on her very first day as working as an event manager for a large pharmaceutical company, a global pharma. And I've blanked out her name for obvious reasons. But let's have a little look, and hopefully you're in full screen mode so you can have a read. So I'll give you a moment there just to have a little read of those messages. And let me know again in the chat what you think. What's that got you thinking about? Can you relate to my friend there? Have a read. Mhm. All right, I'll read some elements of that because I appreciate it's quite hard to see on swap card and it might not be as crystal clear. Kate, I like that you said you've attended my learning tech talk and those messages genuinely stuck with you. They've stuck with me, hence why I still take this, still tell this story. So if you can't read that, I'll give you the gist. There's my friend and she's doing some online learning. And like a few of you have already said, she's already said it's really yawn fest, it's sick, and she's sick and tired of clicking next, next, next. She refers to it as the boring compliance stuff that she has to do. She says that she can't even skip forward and she has to wait for the next button to appear. How many of you, been in that situation where you're waiting for the next button to appear so you can go? She also said that she started to mute the course and having it play in the background, and is guessing the answers. What a naughty learner, right? Doing that. I have to admit, I've seen learning like that before. I've seen learning like that still in this day and age. We might already feel like we're creating learning like that as well. And I know there's loads of different reasons to why we can't move forward with some of our learning, and that we could go into lots more detail on another session, I'm sure. But if I were her boss, there is no way she would be telling me this, right? If I were her boss and asking her how her training is going, she'd probably say it's great. And there's no way she'd be telling her boss that she's cheating her way through it. Like I said, competing for and holding attention in that digital space is really, really tough. And of course, we see lovely learning that's not about this either. So, there's always, this is a bit of an extreme story, but it's also a real story. It's her real experience of her in her very first day. I'm going to share with you some of the e-learning examples that I think she might have been referring to. So this is a kind of, I imagine this is the type of learning she was referring to. These are 9 different examples of anti-money laundering training, that boring compliance training that my friend refers to there. And in my opinion, a bit dated in terms of the visual design. They're a bit too text heavy. They are a little bit off-putting. I Googled good e-learning examples, by the way, and this is what came up. And it's far from good, in my opinion. E-learning shouldn't be an online book. It's far more advanced than that. And we can create much better e-learning than this. I'm going to play you a trailer that we created for a compliance course. And it was for Aztec Group, and it's on anti-money laundering. So it's the same topic as these 6 examples that we see here. So let's have a little watch of the trailer, and then we can think about, the differences between them and what makes it different as well. So let's have a little watch. All right. I think it's pretty cool for a compliance module, right? It gets you excited, different way of really thinking about that information in terms of how to present anti-money laundering information, knowledge and skill. I'll share with you just a couple of screenshots from that course. And, a lot of research supports the benefits of immersive learning. And in immersive learning, the learner is placed in that real world situation and they can explore, they can learn, they can practice how to effectively work through a scenario. And as a technique, it's enabling the application of knowledge, skills, and behaviors, right, in a really safe environment. And that involves resolving a lot of real world challenges, just as they would in a real situation at work. So in this case, during the anti-money laundering course, the learner is provided with background information on a case that they needed to investigate, and they investigate that just like in real life through things like social media, Google, and things like that. And from the screenshots, you can see we've kind of replicated that style of investigation. And then the learner is awarded with being an anti-money laundering hero if they can assess and investigate in the right way. I see this and describe this as that push versus pull, right? We too often push content out onto learners, like those 9 examples that I found on Google, opposed to pulling those learners towards the content and getting them to really think about themselves, think for themselves and being challenged. interactivity isn't just about clicking on some boxes or some pictures, it's all about making decisions. And branching scenarios are a really, really great way to get your learners to practice those critical thinking skills and what they would need to do in a real job. And that whole course is a scenario-based course. I love that already in the chat. You're already saying it's a really great example. Sign me up. It's learning that you would also want to do. I'll share some feedback that the learner actually gave their L&D manager. And I have to say, what I loved about this feedback is, one, they went out of their way to email this feedback. This wasn't feedback that was captured in a training survey form. And the learner said, having some experience in anti-money laundering, I understand that this is not an easy subject to design a training for, particularly in e-learning. Therefore, I was positively surprised to see how good our training is. It is very engaging. I was eager to move between screens to discover new information. It also has a good variety of modality in presenting information. Above all, I was encouraged to think critically, to consider different scenarios, and to utilize my knowledge accumulated during previous anti-money laundering trainings and during day-to-day work. Without a doubt, the best e-learning that I have come across. Now that is feedback that's worth screenshotting and thinking to yourselves, how do I reverse engine this? If this is what I want the outcome to be, how can I make this happen? How can I get my learners to be saying the same thing? This is brilliant feedback, right? And he doesn't mention color. He doesn't mention the cool animations or the graphics. What I take away from this feedback is that he actually really enjoyed thinking. He enjoyed thinking for himself, and he enjoyed learning what was going to help him in his real day-to-day job. And before, 8 months ago, or maybe a little bit less, creating scenario-based learning would be quite difficult because it's quite time-consuming. You have to map it all out. You have to think of the storyline. You have to use lots of creative writing skills. And now it's a lot easier using AI tools like ChatGPT, right? And some of you have already started mentioning that in the chat already, that actually so many tools are enabling us to reach these L&D goals that we might have. So I'm going to share with you a little bit here in terms of ChatGPT, just in case there might be someone who's still never ever seen it, right? That might still be a thing. So on ChatGPT, as we can see here, we've just pasted in a prompt, and ChatGPT is coming up with suggestions that avoid choices that a learner could make and the consequences those choices would have. So what it's enabling us to do is to be thinking more creatively with scenario-based learning. I don't think we have that excuse anymore of not being able to have the time or be able to have the creative writing skills. Of course, you're still going to want to amend all of that. You're still going to want to make it relevant, but it's a nice starting point. Let me know in the chat again, if you're using ChatGPT for scenario-based learning, what are you getting it to help you with? What are you getting it to do for you? I think there's lots and lots of ways in which we can use ChatGPT, which I'll go through in a moment. But what I found quite interesting was how popular it's become in a really short space of time. So if it were in a popularity contest, it would win, right? Up against some of the biggest apps in the world. And it's helped make AI go mainstream, right? It's reached 1 million users in just 5 days from launch, compared to Instagram's 75 days and Spotify's 150 days. In August, it was reported to have 180 million monthly users. That's an 80% increase over an 8-month period. And there are lots of ways that we can start using it just to help us meet those expectations of the modern learner, all those ideas that you came up with a little bit earlier. A couple of ways in which I've been using it, and there's lots of more ways as well, but a couple of ways I've been using it for now is using it for the 80-20 rule. And it's okay. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't give me enough information, but it gives me enough of a good start. And this method is all about asking ChatGPT to share 20% of the most important things to learn about whatever topic you want. And that will help you understand 80% of that topic. Like I said, It's okay, but sometimes doesn't give me enough information, but it's a good start. You could also use it to help you summarize your content. You could, of course, use it to help you generate content, and use it to give you some ideas, and also storytelling. Some of you mentioned in the chat, writing is hard. It is, coming up with words is really hard, but storytelling is so important in learning, but it's hard to do if you don't have those creative writing skills. And ChatGPT can just help bring a narrative or a theme into otherwise quite dry content. And then you could also use it to help you with your drafts, whether it be your meeting notes or your emails or your training content. So a couple of ways there in which we could be using it. The way I'm using it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in a moment, so I'll hand over to Gail in a moment, but the way I've been using it quite a lot recently is as what I call a brainstorming buddy. I asked ChatGPT in this example to act as a learning design specialist and to come up with a cybersecurity training module for a London-based law firm, which included unique themes and that is no longer than 15 minutes. And then it came out with these 5 great ideas. So one was fishing in the Thames, the guarding of the crown jewels, the financial fortress, and so forth. Some really cool concepts. And it gave me a lot more detail, obviously, than what you can see there on the screen. But what it made me do was, as I was reading through it, I just started boosting my creative thinking skills. And, personally, for example, the guarding of the crown jewels, it got me thinking about, oh, I could get people collecting diamonds and rare gems as they progress through a course. I could, have characters of some sort of royal family that are telling the narrative of, guarding the crown jewels, and it's all about cybersecurity. How would I probably would not have put those two together, but I could see it working. And all of these examples and themes sound like e-learning that I would want to do personally. I think it would be quite cool. Gail, what's everyone saying in the chat? Should we stop and take some questions or some reflection points so far?
Yes, we've got some very good comments in the chat, and actually some very good questions around how do we manage the accuracy of the information that we pull out of, for example, ChatGPT. How can we be sure that that it's correct? Any tips on due diligence and all these kind of things, Lena?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the truth is, you don't know, right? It's not good. It's not fact checking for you. There's such a thing called hallucination in ChatGPT, where it can literally sound so convincing that what it's saying is true that you would believe it, right? And unless you know that topic really well, you could be in a position where you're putting out false information. So it's always really, really advised that you are going to go and fact check. You are going to take that human element, use your common sense to think about, right, if I went to pull this from Google, would I just take this as golden truth, or would I go and do a bit more research? Would I go and look at some credible sources to make sure that this is accurate? I am one of the biggest Friends fans ever, right? And I was recently, I was inspired by something on LinkedIn, and it was somebody who'd thrown in a final script of an episode into LinkedIn, and sorry, not into LinkedIn, into ChatGPT. So the final episode of Friends into ChatGPT. And then it asked ChatGPT to write a load of multiple choice questions based on that particular script. And I thought, oh, that's quite fun. I love Friends. Let's see if I can outsmart ChatGPT for once. And I did exactly that. So I threw in a script. It came up with some questions and multiple choice answers. And being the biggest Friends fan, I could see about 6 of those questions and answers were not true. They were pulling on the theme of Friends, but they weren't actual legitimate answers. It wasn't based on that final episode. But to anyone who'd probably watched Friends here and there, they'd probably think, yeah, that would do for my pub quiz or whatever it might be. It sounds about right. They've got, got the names of the characters correct. And the way I was looking and exploring with that idea of Friends was I was thinking, oh, I could maybe think about putting some content of learning into ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT to write me some assessment questions based on that content. And that's what I was testing it out. So going back to that question, yes, you might find that it comes out with a real good accuracy, but never ever rely on that. Always go and do your research after, always go and do your own fact checking to make sure. Any other
That
thoughts or questions, Gail?
that is great. Actually, someone said they would love to use ChatGPT to generate scenarios, but they would probably go back to the subject matter expert and validate that the scenarios and the options are credible and true. And
Very
we've got a
wise.
couple of absolutely couple of questions around useful prompt. I'm not sure if it's something you're planning on sharing, Lena.
Not today. I've done quite a few seminars on prompt engineering and also just the pros and cons of ChatGPT as well. So we can try and get some information sent to that person that's asking after this session around top tips for prompting.
And we've got a key question that is definitely agitating the room, is that will you share your slides at the end?
Yes, absolutely. No problem. Okay. All right. So talking of slides, let's go back into slides so you can see what other slides I might be able to share with you afterwards. All right. So I'm going to bring up that same slide that I had a little bit earlier. So going back to these images that I shared a little bit earlier. So creating, so we've talked about content in terms of text there and how ChatGPT can help us with that. But images is also another thing that AI can help us with. And creating images for scenario-based learning can be really tough, or just even any type of learning, it can be quite tough. But they matter and they make a difference. And these images that you see here on screen were created by our lead graphic designer. He is a human, okay? His name is Tanzil, lovely guy, real person. And these are completely bespoke. They're on brand. They, took a lot of time to make, a lot of effort. He has incredible understanding of UI and UX, as well as framing, ratio, color, and all those things. I took one of those images and we took it and put it into ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, Midjourney. And we asked Midjourney to recreate one of those images. And this is what it created. And, interestingly, Tanzil, our lead graphic designer, quite liked what AI had created here with its pop of color, but it's far from perfect, right? It's not as detailed, and it's got some bizarre hands and a couple of ratio issues there. But using AI to generate images for your learning content can just help grab that attention of your learners and just to modernize some of the content if you're not already using it to do so. I'll show you another example, again from Midjourney. And I had asked Midjourney to create a sketch illustration, and this is what it created. Let me know what you think of these images as well in the chat. Personally, I think it's quite nice. I can see it fitting nicely on a slide or for a scenario. I wasn't able to specify exactly what brand color I wanted in terms of the orange, the Omniplex orange. But it's not to say that it can't happen in the future, right? And there's tools where you can go and take vectors and then go and edit those in Adobe or something like that as well. I asked DALL-E to do the same and create me, exact same prompt, but I asked it to create the same kind of illustration, and it gave me a slightly different variation, not as impressive in my opinion. And then I asked a different prompt. So the next one, I asked it to create me a really realistic image of a diverse group of people attending a fun training course in a high-tech office. I challenge you just for a moment, just to get a little bit closer now to that image, right? Have a little look. What can you spot that hasn't gone too well? Is it super realistic or super scary? I can see things like a head growing on another person's shoulders, some blurred faces, head and body is not in proportion. One face is just covered with a whole load of hair. Tools like this do take a little bit of trial and error. Keep experimenting, keep playing as well. And, tools like, Midjourney, DALL-E, ChatGPT, they've become so accessible, in the sense that they're so easy to grab now. They're often free or as little as sort of $20 a month. They're affordable. They're easy for us to use. They're creating those pathways for us to create better learning experiences. AI has obviously been around for years, but this year it feels like it's the first year that we can touch it and play with it a little bit more. I'll show you another version of the same prompt, but what DALL-E created. Again, you might need to lean in a little and look a little bit closer. Looks like eyeliner gone wrong on some of those faces, but it's kind of just blurred those images into one. It's got a lot wrong there, but it can get it right as well. There are some very impressive images that I've seen it create. And, I was having a look on, on Midjourney on Discord, you can see all of the prompts that people are writing and trialing out. And it's interesting in the modeling world of how many images it's creating of a model advertising XYZ product, and how real they look as well. I'll share with you one thing that stuck with me and has stuck with me since I first heard about it. And it's of this particular influencer called Lil Miquela, Lil Miquela. Feel free to, search her up on Instagram if you have it. And she was rated the top 25 most influential people on the internet by Time magazine. And Lil Miquela has been pictured with a number of celebrities, including Nile Rodgers, Bella Hadid, Diplo. She's been interviewed by Vogue, The Guardian, BuzzFeed. She's worked with brands like Prada, Calvin Klein, Haribo, Netflix, and so forth. And she generates about £10,000 or $10,000, I should say, for ad posts, and rakes in a whopping sort of 10 million a year, or at least a company that created her does. She is 100% AI. She is not a real person at all. And that really surprised me because, if I had seen her as I'm scrolling through my Instagram, I probably would have just thought she is somebody who's just a filtered influencer on Instagram. And I was reading through some of the comments on her posts, and comments included things like, how do you stay so skinny when you're always eating? And they were genuine questions about her lifestyle. How do you afford to fly here, there, and everywhere? And it is becoming a lot harder and harder for people to realize what's real and what's not. And these are some of the ethical issues that we just need to keep an eye on, right? There's an example at the moment of people wanting to stamp each AI generated image so people can establish what's real and what's not. And that is something that we should know and be keeping an eye on and be mindful of when we are generating imagery from AI. But I thought I'd share that because it stuck with me for sure. And yeah, like a few of you have mentioned in the chat, you would easily just think that somebody who's filtered on Instagram, if you were scrolling through, you wouldn't necessarily think that was a completely AI generated image, and it looks so real. There are a surprising amount of tools out there at the moment, and it's hard to keep up with. This screenshot I shared at Learning Technologies this year, and lots of people were taking pictures of this one because these are just some of the tools that I've been playing around with and experimenting with. Some of them have been using for years, like Well Said Labs for voiceovers, and Grammarly, Canva have really added loads of new AI features. Some of these work really well, some of them don't. Some of the presentation ones I'm a bit on the fence with. I think, yeah, it creates a presentation, but it's bullet points and a picture. And that's, I think we're past that now with presentations, aren't we? But there have been thousands of tools that have been released, and it is hard to decide between what's good and what's not. And at times it can feel quite overwhelming. But remember, we learn through experimenting and playing, and that's always a really good thing to continue doing. AI will take our jobs. That's what we hear a lot, don't we? I hope not. I hope it won't take our jobs. But I do think it's going to change them. I already know mine's changed because of AI and, my day-to-day job and what I do and how I use the tools. So let's say, you are a typical learning designer, or, part of your day is learning design. You might spend some of that time in meetings. You might be doing some content generation. You might be doing some quality assurance testing and finessing a course, etc. And then with some AI tools, some of that work is going to start to become a lot easier, right? You're not going to need to type out all your notes after a meeting. AI tools can do that for you, can highlight all of your actions as well. And then, of course, as we've already said with some of the questions in the chat, a human element's always going to be needed. We can get AI to do quite a lot, but we also need to be doing a lot too. So if you compare my first image there, or that first bar, my very rough image, I must say, but my first bar to my last bar, you can see there's some time to be saved with some of the everyday tasks that we do. And if we think about this and think, okay, this could be the future of our roles, what do we then do with our time? What do we then do with, better resources and more tools? And that's a question to you again in the chat. So what can we do with more time, better tools, and more resources? So let me know again in the chat, if AI is making our life easier in making content, where else can we spend our time to supercharge our L&D? What's going on our wish list? Making better content, Kerry, absolutely. Feel free to specify. Liz, working on ROI, good. Any others that are coming through the chat, Gail?
We've got strategizing. Thank you. Sorry about that. Higher volume of output. Make more content, which is interesting. I guess more with less. Upskills ourselves to become better L&D experts. Take creativity further. Increase the number of courses completed. Spend time on our own learning. I guess there's an increase on creativity.
Good.
And one that I think particularly echoes with a lot of us, it gets to know the business and its challenges, because I think
Nice.
it is where we want to spend more time. It's actually understanding better where we can have an impact. We've got also automate processes, evaluation, more time on inclusivity, more time
Good.
to
Good.
develop. So a whole range really,
Yeah.
but a lot is also around better analysis and on the training need.
Good. I really like what Kirsty's mentioned there as well, which is about the QA part, and actually that increasing drastically because we need to validate what AI is saying and generating, keeping our critical thinking skills. I think that's a really important one. I also like Michael's taking longer naps. AI can't do that for us, can it? So, we'll leave the napping to the humans. I like that, Michael. When I've spoken to customers, a lot have said that they would work on, their wish list items are things like gamifying their courses, enabling learning in the flow of work, making content as accessible as possible, improving video learning experiences, creating more immersive learning experiences, getting as creative as possible. So I thought I could talk about a couple of those, starting with gamification. So gamification, I'd say, means different things to different people, but I'll share with you what it means to me in a moment. But I thought I'd share this research as well. So it's done by a company called GameLearn, and they conducted some research on 1,500 learners, and they found that the NPS for e-learning was minus 29. That's really bad, right? That's not good. The people they surveyed said they want more gamification and simulations in their learning, and that really stuck with me. I was thinking, okay, this is also echoing what we hear from our customers as well. And I think gamification, like I said, can mean different things to different people. In my opinion, it doesn't have to be gimmicky at all. Think about things that are gamified on our apps, Fitbit, Apple Watches, mentioned Duolingo earlier, one of the best examples of micro learning and gamification in terms of learning a new language. I think it's brilliant. But in my opinion, the safest way to gamify for the adult learner is to think of gamification either as motivational, for example, points, rewards, badges, or as cognitive. So getting your learners to think about themselves. So that example that I shared with Aztec earlier, that would be considered as a gamified course. I had a customer a little while back, a couple of years back now, and she sent me a crossword puzzle that she'd created using Storyline, and she was super proud of it. Put all of these variables and triggers in place, and she just wanted me to check that it was okay. And I asked her, have you thought about the learners that are going to be doing this crossword puzzle? And she said, no, but I think they'll enjoy it. And it was actually a compliance course. She had thousands of learners that it was going out to. And I questioned the fact that, imagine you've got your CEOs, your C-suite are going to be doing this. They may love crossword puzzles. They may not. They might find it really annoying that they have to, wait to complete a crossword puzzle to then go on to the next slide. So you have to sometimes think about your own audience, what's going to work for them. But like I said, the majority tend to do really well with motivational and gamification, motivational cognitive gamification. And I've got an example there on the screen, just little snippets of games that I've just merged in terms of what we teach in our advanced storyline course. And you can see cognitive, getting your learners to think for themselves, thinking of with their higher order critical thinking skills, making decisions that they would need to in their daily jobs. And then the motivational, getting rewards, badges, and then little games where you can have a little bit of fun, but it's not the be all or end all of that particular course, and it's not forcing someone to sit there for ages to be able to move on to the next thing. So that's one thing. Like I said, I've been hearing from customers saying, if they had a bit more time, they would be spending a little bit more time making their courses more interactive. The other, learning in the flow of work. A lot of you mentioned this earlier when I asked, what are the expectations of L&D in 2023, and learning in the flow of work is certainly one of them. And it's been trending for ages. It's a preferred learning method for many people. I quite like this quote from HBR. And it says, for learning to really happen, it must fit around and align itself to working days and working lives. I think that's a really important bit there, because too often we expect learners to absorb a load of information through one training session and then change their behavior and their actions and everything else towards after the session. And I had this happen in my last role. On my very first day, I was taught how to use the expenses system. And I thought, I'm never going to remember this. I'm never going to remember those cost centers and those cost codes and everything. I won't have any expenses for a little while. I'm brand new. And I was taking loads of notes, and I was trying to help, take those notes to help me remember for the time that I did eventually have my very first expense. And I get it, as a software trainer in the past, I get that training software and systems is really difficult. And often what we do when it comes to software training, and let me know if you do this as well, you go through that whole T&A process, you'll go and train, go and design a training program. That might be through virtual classrooms, PowerPoints, you might be writing scripts, you might be doing lunch and learns, you might be creating e-learning modules. I was working with a customer a couple of weeks ago, and he's creating lots of video screen recordings that he's uploading onto the LMS, and creating system guides in the form of PDFs. And that takes us forever to do, right, as L&D professionals. And what we find is that sometimes still doesn't work. People still get stuck on how to navigate that software, make the most of the features in the moment they need it. So often you go and interrupt your colleague or send them a message or ask over the desk, can you show me how to do X, Y, Z again? And the way we sort of combat this internally, because this is a problem, globally, software adoption is a massive thing at the moment. We empower our employees to feel like they have that knowledge, that have that skill to help them with what they need in real-time help. Because people expect content to be served to them intelligently in the moment of need. And tools like Omniplex Guide are really brilliant at being enabling learning in the flow of work. So in the case of me and my expenses story, all I would have had to do is remember the name of the expenses system and then use a tool like Omniplex Guide to help me know exactly what cost center to use, what the process was, what the best way of doing it was. And then I wouldn't have felt like I had to go through all my notes and also disturb my boss and ask the finance manager all these questions again. So it works like a virtual trainer, guiding a learner through a process. And that's where, learning in the flow of work, like I said, it is that expectation. That is what our learners do expect nowadays. In this particular example, I've got Omniplex Guide sitting on top of an LMS. So it's acting as a layer of guidance. And if it's cloud-based, if you've got cloud-based software like Salesforce, your learning management system, finance software, HR software, etc., then Omniplex Guide can support it. So it's a type of tech we should have as part of our L&D toolkits. And those pop-ups that you see on screen, you can have any text you want. You can add your videos or your GIFs or your SCORM content and all of those things. And there's no technical skill required. So it means that anyone can go and create some of these guides to help that learning in the flow. And if you think this isn't new technology, that's why learners expect it, because we already see it on our apps. We already see it on our phones as well. So in terms of you've already touched upon this in the chat as well, which is the benefits surrounding learning in the flow and something we should be thinking about. It simplifies that user journey. It enables employees to get what they need without having to leave the application. So learners don't have to then go to SharePoint or to an LMS. It can all be embedded into a guide instead. And of course, tools like this are going to reduce time. It's going to make things easier to manage. Updating. How many times do you find guides that go up to date so quickly? I remember I used to spend so much time creating these beautiful guides. They used to be really jam-packed with information for the system. And then learners would forget about that quite quickly, and they'll still go around asking for help when they were learning that system. So learning in the flow, as many of you have already said, is something our learners expect. The last one I want to leave you with before we take some questions is video-based learning. We know video works. Again, when I was asking customers, what would you do with more time? A lot of them say they want more video. They just don't have the time to create video. And what I like doing personally with videos in learning is making them interactive, because like my story with my friend, too many people are muting videos now and they're just not as engaging enough, and then they kind of try and guess their way through certain things. Whereas with interactive videos, you can add things like quizzing, you can add more sort of scenario-based elements if you wanted to. So in this example, if the video plays, let's see if it does play, might not play. It's playing, there we go. So in this example, I've merged a couple of videos just to show you as an example of adding layers of interactivity. So I've got a Beyond video there and then some layers of storyline on top. So you could add quiz questions or you could add hotspots. And they're a really great way to get your learners to pay attention, making choices, putting them into a scenario that they would need to be faced with in their day-to-day job. And you could deliver a whole load of modules through interactive videos if you wanted to. And then when you're thinking about using the power of AI, creating videos become so much easier now as well. So, in this example here, I've got Beyond Go. Has anyone tried Beyond Go yet? Let me know in the chat if you have. I might be a little bit biased. Wait for that video to start playing. And I might be a little bit biased here, but I think Beyond Go is truly game-changing. It's made my life a lot easier for sure. I think it's one of the most transformational Beyond releases, in terms of products. It is so good. And it is using the power of AI and allowing you to make a video literally in seconds. All you have to do is add a prompt, and then Beyond Go works its magic, and you then have a script and a video. So think about what ChatGPT is doing in terms of pulling up a load of content for you. Beyond's doing the same thing whilst making a video at the same time, which is pretty impressive, right? So I haven't edited this video that you're seeing here at all. So everything you're seeing is actually in real time, and you're seeing it in terms of how long it would actually generally take to generate a script and also a video. And then all of that script you can easily edit and customize. You can customize the whole video as well. So exciting times ahead, I think, there in terms of video generation and what AI can do for us. Going to summarize there for you before we take some questions. Donald H. Taylor, who's the chairman of Learning Tech, said this a couple of months ago now, actually, but it really stuck with me. And he said AI is the lowest quality it will be today, meaning it's going to get better, it's going to get faster, it's going to get smarter. And I think that goes for most technology in general, right? Not just AI. There is still so much we need to understand. We can't be afraid to practice and play to keep our skills alive. And we need to do it to meet those expectations of the modern learner, right? If you feel like you've got learning that's still stuck in that 2000 rut, it's time to bring yourselves up to speed, bring your organization with you, educate them on what our learners are expecting and how you are competing in the digital space as well. Like I said, we have an expectation of what we see digitally now, and that includes your e-learning, that includes your PDFs, that includes your PowerPoints. And I think no matter how far technology comes, learning and the learner should always be made central in that journey as well. You know, one of my fears around AI is that because it can become so easy to produce quantity that we forget about the quality. We actually forget about, oh, is this something that my learners need? Have we done a thorough analysis? Or are we just pushing out content just because we can, because we've got a new shiny thing to play with? So, you know, always making that learner really centric to what you are doing. I hope that helps. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, any thoughts that you might have as well. Gail, any questions coming through?
We do actually, Lena, we do. And a lot around AI. Just to pre-warn you, it is definitely the topic of this Learning Technology Conference. So we've got a questions from Mark, and it's got like 4 thumbs. So I think there's at least 5 people interested. Mark asked, how can we ensure that generative AI or AI-generated learning content is original and does not violate the copyright of others? Which I think it's a very powerful question.
Very powerful indeed, Mark. This is, I'll be honest, a question I can't answer with a straight, plain answer, at least. You know, the jury's still out with copyright issues and copyright laws and all those types of things. I think, you know, if you keep a very close eye to it, you can see it's getting a lot tighter. I think there are going to be ways, there needs to be ways. Otherwise, it's, you know, pure plagiarism in some context or another. So, you know, we need to be keeping a closer eye. But I don't think the answer is out. Not as far as I know at the moment, Mark, but some others might be able to in the chat. So let us know if you've had any more experience with this and how we can start, you know, not violating those copyright laws. But I think we'll soon be hearing, won't we, Gail, of when that answer and when the jury's out on that.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things happening on that field, and today's sessions may not be the place where we learn so much about it, but I think it is in the process of happening. A lot of people are thinking about it in the legal world. So I think we will know, as Lena says, a lot more very soon. We are sadly nearing the end of the sessions. Everybody was very excited about getting your slides, Lena. I won't lie. And Sarah wanted to have the list of tools which are on the slide, Sarah. Jessica from Learning Tech has kindly offered to upload the PDF of the slide on the page where you are currently watching the sessions from. So I think, Lena, you're happy with that to happen. So this should be there with the recording during the course of tomorrow. And I think that brings us to the end of our sessions. A lot of very positive comment in the chat. I agree with everybody. It was very practical, very hands-on, and I think it's quite reassuring because sometimes we just need the tools. The strategy is all nice and jolly, but sometimes we need just to get on with it, and that was a great session for that. So a huge thank you to you, Lena, and And to all of you who participated, share your comments and your suggestions as well. And then, what did I want to say? Yes, this is the last sessions of day one of learning technology. We will be back on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. So we are looking forward to be back with all of you. And wherever you are in the world, we wish you a very good evening, afternoon, or day. See you very soon, everybody. Thank you.